always like to start whenever I speak to people is for them to take about a minute and think about what would you do if you were not, if tomorrow, through circumstances out of your own hands, you were not able to teach anymore. What would be some of the things that you would do? What would you do for money? What would you do to satisfy your love for children? What would you do? And just think about it for a second because this is going to go into the story about what happened to me and how I was able to kind of recreate my teaching brand or discover it. All right, so one of the things that, as you're thinking about that, I always like to let people know who I am. So one of the things is that I started teaching when I was very young, out of college. And one of the things that I always knew that I wanted to do was work with children. And so I went in from college straight into the classroom. And from there, I decided that I wanted to work with students in an urban setting. Um, I worked in the Southwest and in several years. And then I kind of came to my current employment, which is in the metro Atlanta area. And all this comes back into when I ask you guys, what would you do if you no longer had a job? One of the things that about 3 years ago, I had one of the best years of my teaching career. My colleagues nominated me for Teacher of the Year. Um, it was just a wonderful year going through. And then, probably in April, all teachers in our district got a letter saying we would have to reapply for our jobs. So basically, we would have to go through and we would have to not only reapply, but it was in very vague circumstances how we would all reapply and what would happen to know if we actually got a job. One of the things that I noticed was that after going through the process, and the process was very demeaning, especially to educators. We had to bring 10 copies of our resume. We had to interview with principals in a big gym. You had 15 minutes to go to a school you wanted. Any school that teachers wanted to be at, there were long lines. It was just a very demoralizing situation. And going through this process of having to reapply, as I sat in line and watched my colleagues who I knew were excellent teachers, was that it made me realize that as a teacher, I need to be responsible for my professional livelihood, meaning I need to make sure that the next year I'm not in the same situation. And if I am, I have things that I can fall back on to help me so that I'm not completely dependent on my school district. So before we go into anything, into the strategies, let's talk about, what is teacher branding. One of the things that I noticed was that in teaching, nobody ever tells you when you're in a teacher prep program, when you're getting your master's, when you're getting your bachelor's, about teachers and brands. But we see it every day. If we want to go learn something about universal design by learning, universal backwards design, then we go to Grant Wiggins. That's his brand. However, teachers aren't taught it. We kind of figure it out and we go from there. So according to Entrepreneur magazine, your brand is your promise to your customer. And if you think about that, what is your promise to your parent? What is your promise to your school district? What is your promise to education? So as you go through and you look at that, as a teacher, you have a brand. It might be that you're the rock star fifth grade teacher. It might be that you're the reading expert in the building. It might be you're the math specialist. Even if you don't hold the title, other teachers go to you because they respect your brand. And so they come to you with problems, with issues, with things they need you to help solve. That's your brand. A couple of years ago, I worked with a lady that taught math in a totally non-conventional way. She believed that kids only learn math by having them being able to discuss it and then do it. And so when you went in her classroom, it was totally different than any math classroom you had ever been in. However, kids were learning, kids were talking math, doing math, and that was her brand. And she had a special niche with not only working with math, because that's really broad, but she really worked well with lower level students in math. So as we go and we talk about what is teacher branding, as I sat in that line and I was giving my resume out and I was thinking how much it was so horrible for me to have to do this, I thought about the topic that teachers need a voice, and teachers need a way to show that they're an expert in education. Hence, if you look at the bottom of my screen, the Educator's Room was born. Now, one of the first strategies that I'm going to tell you to do, and these are not things that I realized overnight, but just through experience, was that I had to redirect my anger. After I got my offer letter and I realized I was going to be at this school and I was going to work with this principal and I didn't have to worry about my job anymore, I really had to figure out a way to redirect my anger. And I say that in that we have a lot of things in education being thrown at us that should make us angry. However, we have to take that anger and we have to put it into something positive other than our kids, because we already do that. So one of the things I tell teachers is to focus on your brand. At the Educator's Room, we have a really rock star teacher. She's from Kansas, and she's a fourth grade teacher, and her expertise is social studies. And one of the things I told her was that she needed to make sure that she focused on her brand of fourth grade. She's taught it for 25 years. She's an expert. People come to her in the building. So she was focusing on how to build her brand. Now, when you redirect your anger, one of the first things you have to do before you can even get past the redirection of your anger or your anxiety or your sadness, it's different emotions for different people. For me, it was anger because I was really upset that after many years in education, me earning degrees and me doing things like that, that I had to be forced to reapply for my job. I had to second off, well, first off, but in the process, both of them kind of merged. I had to reassess my skills/qualifications. So one of the things I always tell teachers to do is really sit down and think about what you're qualified and what skills you have. When we think about teaching, a lot of people think we just get up in front of the classroom and we give a lesson and that's it. But no, we're negotiators, we're instructional designers. What are some of the things that you do in your classroom on a day-to-day basis? And this is a really broad question, but it's a very detailed question. So one of the things that I had to do after I went through the interview process was that I really had to go through and I wrote down like 30 skills that I did on a day-to-day basis. And for things that I couldn't remember, I went on the internet and Googled teacher job responsibilities. You're a data analyst, you're a behavior specialist, you're a mediator. All of those things that I wrote down. And when I was doing it, it took me a good week or so. I had to keep going back and saying, and I do this also. Oh, and I do this. And from that list of about 50 things, I've identified at least 3 to 4 skills that I considered myself an expert in. And those are the skills that I focused on. So one of the things that I focused on was teaching reading to urban children and urban education and classroom management. Those were my 3 skills. So as you go through and you think about reassessing your skills and your qualifications, really take some time and think about what you do on a daily basis, and then take those things and narrow it down to about 3 different skills that you would say you consider yourself an expert. Are there any questions about that? Because it's a really vague, but it's really hard because as teachers, we don't like to toot our own horn. We don't like to say we're really good at something. It's really important because if you go to any teaching conference, there are people who literally go through and who make a lot of money, who teach about things that we're already experts in. If you look at, with the use of Common Core text-dependent questions, as an AP teacher, we taught this all the time. However, somebody coined the term text-dependent questions and has sold it out to people, and that is their expertise. So I tell teachers all the time, after you figure out what you're expert in, then it's time to research because you have to see what's already out there, what people are saying, how people are doing, and what products that need to be on the market that are not. All right, so one of the things that and I keep saying this, and I've said this many, many times, one of the things that all teachers do is that we are in the classroom at least 180 days a year, at least. And with that 180 days, we get a lot of action research about what works and what doesn't work. So one of the things is that after you have your skills and after you've decided about what works in the classroom and what doesn't, I'm sorry, what your area of expertise is, then it's time for you to go through and for you to think about creating a product. And when I say product, I mean something that is going to highlight your skills. One of the things that I always say, and when I say this about creating a product, teachers are really floored because they're saying, product, what do you mean? Like my product is teaching, but a product in the sense of that you can sell. And let me say this, no teacher should be ashamed of selling what they do in the classroom. No teacher should say, oh, no, I can't do it. I do it for the kids. No, you do it for the kids, but you also do it for your livelihood. And part of your livelihood is making income. So when I say product, that could be a book. That could be an account on Teachers Pay Teacher. That could be a website. It could be a variety of different things, but you need a product, and that's using your skills. If you're the rock star reading teacher, and everybody comes to you with special cases, and they want to know, what do you do when a child can't decode? What do you do when a child can't do this? One of the things that you need to do is think about how can you make that into a product. When I always go back to this experience, but when you think about understanding by design, backwards design, Grant Wiggins really took a skill that teachers were already doing, and he packaged it and he sold it for millions of dollars, and he's still selling it. So you may be the person that will sell a reading ebook. You might be the person that says, hey, I really want to start a website for parents on how to teach their kids how to read. Or I really want to do a reading program. I have a really good idea for a reading program that works in my class. These are all ways to use your skills outside of the classroom box. And remember, you have what a lot of people don't have, and that you have action research. You have students that are using your products every day, so you know if they really work or if they really don't. Now, I get a lot of pushback from this. We have one side of educators who will say, well, I do it for the kids, I don't do it for money. However, on the other flip side are people who are saying, no, I need to do this for my livelihood. I don't make enough in the classroom. I need this extra thing to kind of help me. So what I say is I meet it in the middle. We're professionals. Professionals get paid. So there is no shame in you creating a product and selling it. There's no shame in you creating a product and promoting it. That's what you do. That's part of building your brand. I use the example of, when you think about Nike doesn't say, oh, our shoes are a little bit, they're kind of good. They might help you. They say we're the best. This is what we do, and this is how we know this. So as a teacher, whatever your product is, you have to present it as the best option for parents and for schools in order for you to market it correctly. Okay, that's kind of like my passion, so I can talk about that all day. And if you have a question, just go ahead and type it in and I will answer it. All right, so strategy number 4 is as you go through, you have to hit the ground running. Now, one of the things that I did after I started the Educator's Room was that, I had the pretty website, but it was really important for me to see who were the education leaders in what I was doing. Our website is built on the brand that teachers are the experts. So on the site, we don't have people that aren't teachers writing articles, because our premise is that teachers are the experts, so we have to respect them. So one of the things that you need to do is to learn about who are the experts in your area of expertise. So who are the reading specialists out today? What kind of books do they have out? What kind of products do they offer? Are they on social media? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Facebook? Are they on LinkedIn? What's their approach? And this will help you as you narrow down your product. For example, one of the leading thought experts in education is ASCD. So it was important for us to develop a relationship with them so that we could not only learn from them, but that we could be exposed to their audience of millions of readers. So one of the things that we did off top, we said, no one can write for the site unless they are currently a teacher or retired as a teacher. And that is not to be elitist, but that is to say we really value our mission statement. Then we went through on Twitter. We made sure we were connected on social media, Facebook first, Twitter. I didn't put Pinterest, but Pinterest is huge, LinkedIn. And we made sure to go through and to literally connect with anybody who was a thought leader. And when I say connect, I don't just mean signing up for an account and tweeting every so often, like really going through doing Twitter chats, Facebook chats, linking up with people on LinkedIn, just so that we could create a community of people who would read our stuff. And then also looking at the approach. One of the things with the educators room is that, we don't allow people who are non-educators write for the site. And a lot of sites don't have that same philosophy. So people know when they come to the educators room that we're going to be discussing things. They can trust us because the people that are speaking about it are teachers. So that was one of the things that allowed people to trust us and to say, okay, they might be legit. And this will help you as you create a product. If there's 5 million books on teaching reading, are there 5 million books on teaching reading in 5th grade? Are there 5,000 books on teaching nonfiction in 5th grade? Are there 5,000 sources in you going through and creating a list of resources for people who teach 5th grade? You have to think about it that way. What's already out there and what can I add to the market? One of the things that we did is that we decided that we wanted to publish some books. And as you look at the screen, you'll see there are 2 books, 2 of our most recent books that we published. And I'll just talk about Angels in My Classroom for a little bit. Angels in My Classroom is actually from a teacher in Chicago, and she wanted to write a book after her husband died of cancer. And she actually writes for the site, The Educator's Room. And hold on, Jennifer, I'm going to get your question in just a second. What she decided was that she wanted to tell her story of how a group of 2nd grade students really saved her life when her husband died from cancer. So that is her story. It's unique for her. Yes, there's tons of books out about teaching in 2nd grade, but how many of those books deal with grief and loss in the 2nd grade? Jennifer, you had a question. Let me go to that. How do you suggest figuring out how to make the jump from blogging, writing to presenting? That's a really good question. Okay. First things first. It's always easier to present and to want to present when you have a product. But if you don't need to worry about it as much. What I would say do is every organization that has a conference has a web page, and they have a thing called Call for Speakers. You have to, so for example, the ASCD conference is coming up in March 2015. They took all their conference speaker proposals in May. I'm sorry, the deadline was May of 2014. So what you need to do is make a list of all conferences you've attended, or all conferences that hit on your grade level or your subject area or your grade band. And you need to Google them, and you need to find their call for speakers. In Georgia, GCTE just has a call for speakers. They're taking K through 5 and 6 through 12. So if you Google call for speakers for GCTE, you should be able to find the link. And then from there, you want to take your conference proposal and you want to talk about something relevant to your classroom and or relevant to the product that you're going to create. So if you're thinking about creating a math program for your students, then you wouldn't present at GCTE, but you would be able to, for GCTM, you really would be able to write a conference proposal for that. And I can go into when I do the next webinar, about how to create a a winning conference proposal. You know, it was really important when we started. We went to a lot of conferences. We went to NCTE, NCTM, we went to ASCD, and we went to the different presentations. And looking at the conference booklet, we kind of said, okay, well, this is what we can add. Okay, well, this is what we can do. Well, they don't have this. This would be cool. And that's really how we started to present at conferences. So, you know, and if it's the call for proposal is not on the website, simply send them a tweet. They're usually really good about that because they understand that the only way you get educators to your conference is having other educators speak. So it's important for you to go through and for you to do that. Any other questions, Jennifer? If you do, just type them in and then I'll answer them. So your product. So our product, we have books. We have articles. The articles that we write are our products. We have the site. We're working on some more ebooks. And we do conferences and we do one-on-one coaching. An example that I have is another writer for us. She's an expert in elementary reading. So what she has started to do, she presents locally for her state. And what that has allowed her to do is to go through and to really make connections within the state. So she gives these conference proposals and she speaks to principals and other teachers and other building leaders. And within the last 6 months, she's been hired to come and speak to schools. And through her speaking for schools, she's not only doing what she loves, but she's making money. And one of the things that I said when I spoke to her was that, you know, for example, if you make $500 every time you go and speak to, and it's not about the money, but we have families and we have to make sure that we're providing for them. We can't just miss work to miss work. If she's doing 3 conferences a week, or 3 presentations a week, and she's making $500 each time, she's making $1,500 a week, which is $3,000 every 2 weeks, which is 2 weeks, which is $6,000 a month. So those are some of the things that you think about. You know, I know speakers who are making, for one keynote speech, they're making $6,000 just for one, and all they do is travel. So that really brings home the point, you need a product. You have to have a product, and that can be a website, that can be a book, that can be an ebook, that can be a program, that can be a service, but you need a product because that will allow you to go places and talk to people. And once you speak at these conferences and you speak to these people, it's an excellent segue for you to say, hey, here's my product, think about it for your school. Okay? One of the other things that I want to make sure that I get to is that it's really, really, really important for educators to really think about, once you create the product, how you sell your product. For the educators room, we're big on networking. So we tell all of our writers, you know, to share the articles that you write, but also to, when you go to conferences, to meet people. Give them your business cards, which everybody needs them, but that'll be another webinar. You know, share with people how you are, what you're doing in education. One of the things that we had to do, that I had to do, is really go to the bookstore. I went to other websites. I went to other conferences. And I just really started to network within my building, within my school district, within my city, just so that I could meet people that were like-minded. Because surprisingly, I might get a call that says, hey, Franchesca, I really need you. Can you come speak to these teachers? They really need help with this. And that's an excellent way to not only talk about my passion for education, but also to sell my product. And for me to say, hey, if you have a group of new teachers that are struggling right now, please go through, read my book, get the book. And it's always interesting to know, you know, this can be overwhelming for people who are just starting. So you should by no means think that tomorrow your book will be ready unless you've already written your book and you have it together. But give yourself a timetable. If you say within the next 6 months, I need to have my book finished, well then what will you do to get your book finished? What will you do to get your product together? What will you do to get your service together? Are you waiting on a website design? What are you waiting on to get everything for you together? Now, before we go back and before we end, I want to talk to you about just doing it. A lot of people will say, well, I know I need to do this. I've been thinking about this. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And I say that in that we take so long trying to figure out what we want to do that we don't feed our passion. So I always tell my students, I always would tell my students, and I tell other teachers that I work with to just do it. If you think it's a good idea, there's a reason you think that. So instead of getting caught up into the logistics, go through and start to think about ways that you can go ahead and get that together. Okay, so we're at the end of the webinar. One of the things that I encourage everybody to do, and I've talked about this a lot, is to create a product. So step one is think about, brainstorm a product. What will you create? What will you do? The next is to get active on social media. Social media is huge. There are tons of support groups, Facebook pages, Twitter pages, Pinterest pages for you to use. Reach out to other thought leaders in your area of expertise and begin researching educational conferences to present it that focus on your areas of expertise. These are four action steps that will help you, because the next step will be once you create your product, what do you do? So your action steps right now is really thinking about these four things. How can you get these things done? And this might take you a year. It might take you 6 months. It might take you 3 months. It depends on where you're at in the process and what your time looks like with school, your family, other obligations. But these are things to get you started, especially when you speak about teacher branding. You know, I use the analogy that the days are gone where you can teach for 30 years and retire at the same school and be happy. A lot of policies are coming in place that are really forcing teachers to leave the profession, or to move schools a lot, or to just be unhappy. So you want to think about your teacher brand early enough so that you're not in a situation where the next day you don't have a job and you don't know what you're going to do. Okay? If anybody is looking, we will start having these webinars once a month, and they'll be on a variety of topics. If you go through, you can email me at Fran at the Educator's Room. You can visit us on the site, theeducatorsroom.com. You can find us on Twitter at the Educator's Room. But our goal with the webinars are to inform teachers and to help teachers and to talk about things that are not normally shared with teachers, so that everybody kind of has support. So we'll have one in about a month. And if you have any questions, you can email me. You can put them in the chat box right here, and I'll try to answer them. Or if you have any topics that you want to learn about. Thank you for joining us, and you guys have a great Thanksgiving break. Mommy.